Now that you've learned about the importance of writing melodies for film, TV, and games, let's learn about some of the common techniques to actually go about writing them. The first technique is to utilize scales and modes. Now we're going to cover this in depth in later lectures, but it's important to understand the concept. Now, if you are in the key of C major, which is C all the way to C, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, what this does is this limitation forces us to only choose from those 7 letters. This is great because whenever you're writing music, you need to have restrictions, limitations, and rules so that you can be creative within those bounds. So again, we'll cover this later, but it's a very important concept. Whenever you're starting a piece of music, you should try to choose a key area, which would be a scale or a mode, so that you can really focus on creating a melody from there. The second technique is to utilize passing tones. Now, a passing tone is any time you connect two diatonic or in a scale or mode passage of music, which would be 2 notes. You're going to connect them with the note that is in between. So for example, in the key of C, if we're going to play a C, E, F, which is a 1 chord to a 4 chord, it could be very useful to use a D note in between the C and E to connect the two, which is called a passing tone. Now, if you were to slow this down, it doesn't quite sound great because it's not in the diatonic chord of C major. But when you play quicker music or whatever, it's important to try stretching a little bit away from the diatonic notes. Otherwise, you're going to always sound like you're playing harmony. The next common technique is to use large leaps. Now, the main theme for most films or video games really uses this one because it's one of the quickest ways to create a memorable melody, something that really sticks in your head. And if it's a main theme for a movie or a game, it's going to really stick in your head for the entirety of that project. So a large leap is defined as a 4th all the way up to an octave, also known as an 8th. And it's using these not all the time, but you're using them maybe every 2 to 3 notes in your melody, and you're using on the other notes just using different types of scalar passages to really try to fill in the gaps. So one of the most well-known themes that uses this would be the Star Wars main theme, composed by John Williams. It goes like this. And if we dissect that, it starts off with a 4th, then a 5th, walks down the scale, goes up a 7th, down a 4th, scale, 7th, 4th, scale, then a passing tone to get back to the D, which happens to be a 5 chord. So there are a lot of great ways to use large leaps, and I highly recommend experimenting with it. The next common technique is to use the downbeat as your source of rhythm. So what this means is if you are in 4/4 time, there's a very clear pulse or beat behind the count. So you don't just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 like a robot. Instead, you need to put an emphasis or a pulse, a stress on the 1s and the 3s. So when you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a clear emphasis on the 1s and 3s. So when you are choosing which rhythms to choose, fast notes versus slow notes, you should try to plan ahead for the downbeats to get the most emphasis. So in 4/4 time, you'll notice how I emphasize the downbeats and I put the quick notes, the 8th notes, on the off beats, the 2s and 4s, and it really helped create a more memorable melody. In 3/4 time, typically is used for dances or waltzes, which is 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. So you want the ones and sometimes the threes to have the emphasis. So for example, and you just notice how I'm really putting those strong beats on the 1. So one more example would be in 6/8 time, which is commonly used for jigs, as in Irish music. You have 6 beats, and so you want the first beat and the 4th beat to have the strong downbeats. So what this means is you would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for example, which could easily be turned into and you notice how I had the memorable melody because I was not only using large leaps, but because I was really hitting these strong down beats. The final common technique would be using the gravity principle. So, just like gravity, what goes up must come down. And similarly in music, you could do the opposite, which is what goes down must come up. So what this means is if you are in a key area, a scale or mode, in this case, C major, C is our home note. So it is our 1 chord or our tonic chord. So what this means is you want to start there, go somewhere, and then come back. So in this example, and when you pair that with harmony, it makes for a nice sound melody because we went somewhere, we came back, and it had a nice finality to it. So to recap, we learned about common techniques for writing effective melodies. These include scales and modes, passing tones, large leaps, downbeat rhythms, and the gravity principle.